Right, so let's get into our discussion for this evening. Talking now the safety of e-hailing services having once again come under the spotlight. This after radio personality Anele Mdoda shared her experience on social media platform X. Mdoda says she ordered an Uber and selected the "Don't Talk to Me" option, which according to her resulted in alleged mistreatment and even rape threats from the driver. Now this triggered a number of comments on X from those who shared their horrific experiences while using e-hailing services. But now for an in-depth discussion on the story, we are joined by Siyabonga Hlabisa, who's the chairperson of Western Cape's e-hailing association, and Bulelwa Adonis, who's spokesperson for Women for Change. And also, we're welcoming some of your own positions on this one. How safe do you feel using e-hailing services? And have you had similar frightening experiences? If you have, is there aid? Is there assistance? Is there accountability? Give us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584, or feel free to give us a call on 010-594-6010. Really looking forward to getting your thoughts on this one. But Bulelwa, I want to start with you. A good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. When you see the post by Anele Mdoda and just the stream of responses on X with so many people saying they've had similar experiences, any surprises there? Was this something that was bound to be a big discussion and certainly needs to be?
Good evening, my lady. I'm so sorry. I just got hit by load shedding. Can you please reiterate your question?
Sure.
Sorry, it froze.
Just your reaction. Now, this is the times we're living in, Bulelwa. Your reaction to the post by Anele Mdoda, and if you were surprised by not just the outpouring and the reactions of people saying, well, we've been through similar things, but if we've given this enough attention, this issue of safety on e-hailing services.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. I think it's just like people have been commenting, this is a common occurrence. This is not an unfamiliar or a unique situation, unfortunately. Obviously, we're disheartened. I think one story, it shouldn't take multiple stories for us to be outraged or disheartened by stories like this. But if we're being honest, organizations like us, we encounter stories like this on a daily basis. We've touched base countless times with e-hailing services pertaining this issue, pertaining safety in e-hailing services. So this is not unfamiliar to us. This is not a new story to us, but obviously it's disheartening. It's never a good thing to hear a story like what we heard with Anele's.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right, is that the allegation that she's making here is that there was a threat for her to be sexually assaulted. I mean, that's a serious threat, Bulelwa, and I'm staying with you on this one. So you say you've heard a lot of these sort of stories from e-hailing customers. Can you give us some of the examples that you have heard, those that have come forward?
Yes, like I said, this is not something that's unfamiliar to us. This is not something that's unique. Sorry about the light. This is load shedding. I apologize. But in terms of examples pertaining this, outside of obviously Anele's story today, there was a story last year that I can remember. I think last year, November, where there was an incident in Cape Town where a lady had used an Uber, if I'm not mistaken, one of the e-hailing services. And unfortunately, it resulted in her almost being kidnapped. It turned into a situation where they reached a stop, and four unknown men forced their way into their vehicle, and they almost attempted to rape her, to harm her. So that you can hear that this is one of the more gruesome stories. But I think this is not unfamiliar to us. This is not a unique sense, which is I'm trying to emphasize on. But we hear about this all the time. I mean, we did a survey last year as well. We did a whole survey where we unpacked, asking people questions if they feel safe or not. Asking, and I have my, if you don't mind me looking down, I wrote down some of the what do you call it, the results we got from our survey, which we had over 5,000. We had over 5,000 participants, and 73% of the respondents reported to feeling unsafe in e-hailing services. 22% of people experienced sexual harassment as well as verbal abuse. And then we had 9% of participants who actually themselves experienced some form of abuse. This is inclusive of sexual abuse and whatnot. And then we also had 48% of people who knew of someone who had been harassed or assaulted within e-hailing services. So this is just a clear portrait, and this is just over 5,000 people. You can imagine the reality of South Africans in general utilizing these services of what it looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at the sort of responses to the discussion on social media, you've got people that are even, asking about whether or not she is being dramatic. Someone is even running a poll, right? Anele's a drama queen, she's an attention seeker, and then saying that the Uber driver is wrong. But Siyabonga, let's bring you in here. You're the chairperson of the Western Cape E-Hailing Association. When you look at the discussion and what it sparked in the country, what are your first thoughts as an association?
No, it's. I think this is becoming a common issues within the industry. The conflict between the driver and the rider. And when you look into previous cases, we are facing this challenge, and we've been trying to speak to all the app companies, especially those popular ones that are operating in South Africa. We are still having a big issue whereby we've been trying to emphasize to them that they need to make sure that riders are safe, also drivers are safe. But unfortunately, there are some challenges there and there with other apps who are not complying to our demands. So one of the advice that I want to give to the riders at the moment and clients is that app like Uber, as the case that you are just talking about now, that we just all of us see on social media, there is an option that Uber has on the app that says that you can record a conversation between you and your driver. So when you get a car, that option is the best option to use, so that if there's any conflict between the two of you or any disagreement between the two of you, because there will be no one else who's going to be there, is between the two, the rider and the driver. So that option assists a lot in terms of to know who was wrong, who was right. If this case like this just happened, it's the best option. So my advice is that I think looking forward, riders should use that option, as the drivers, they are using that option most of the time.
Yeah, just talk to me a little bit about the issues that you've raised with app companies, because you talk about conflict between riders and drivers, and I want to hear what some of those concerns are that are raised with the app companies. But also just the sort of innovation that, there's the record your conversation. At that point, though, the conversation was already gone awry. So if there's any sort of innovation or training that goes into the work that is done for drivers as well on, customer service and such. If Uber has the option, do not talk to me, it's there for a reason. And if that's a point of contention, that's really concerning. Siyabonga.
No, it's very true. You see, I think that's why I'm trying to say that I think we have a very big challenge with the app companies at this current moment, especially the training that some of them, they are, just keeping the line and trying to move fast to put the drivers on the program. But some of the drivers, they are no more going to trainings now, which is one big issue that we've also been raising previously. And also, I think one should understand that there is a very big issue with these app companies. Remember, these drivers, they've never been asked their level of education, even the issue of how, which language preferable they can use while transporting riders. It's one of the challenges that has been raising to these app companies, that, they need to consider that, because drivers, honestly speaking, they don't understand sometimes some of the things that have been initiated on those apps. It's become a challenge to the driver. And in this case of the disagreement and not understanding the app that the drivers are using, sometimes we don't really blame the drivers, because sometimes these app companies, they can introduce any feature on the app, but without consulting the drivers. So that's why I think the conflict starts from there. So that's why I want to say that, riders should use options that are there to record conversations. And also, the app companies, we've been saying to them, they must make ways to make sure that drivers are educated and work trained also on a customer service.
Yeah, talk to me about what happens when a client, Siyabonga, I'm going to stay with you just for a moment on this one. A client raises an issue and says, I have a safety concern on an app, let's say Uber, Bolt, and you can choose the various examples. What happens? What does the app then do afterwards? So is there recourse, or, you know, the driver and the client go their separate ways and that person stays on the roads? What happens?
No, there's an option there. I think on the end of the trip, there's an option where you can rate the driver service. Obviously, once you rate that, there is an option where if you are unhappy about the service from the driver, you should lodge a complaint before you rate the driver. And if there is any issue that is escalated and is beyond even like something very serious, you can lodge a complaint. And then, I think these app companies, they are using something called customer always right, because obviously most of the time you find that drivers are the one that are found guilty in any cases. We've been also as an association trying to, speak to those app companies to say that they need to consider both sides, to do a proper investigation to find out who was right, who was wrong, because also the driver on their side, they found being unfairly deactivated by these app companies because of sometimes, honestly speaking, some of the riders, sometimes they make lies accusation about the drivers. We can't run away from that. But also most cases, you find that the drivers are being deactivated if there's any conflict with the rider. So I think the rider, they always, been the one winning the cases when it's come to launching complaints. So there is an option that you should go to and use that option to launch a complaint so that these app companies can, hear your concern. And obviously they'll contact the driver also and let the driver know that there is a complaint that comes from a rider. But I think also it depends on the sensitivity of the matter or the seriousness of the matter, because sometimes some of the cases, they'll give a driver a warning. Some of the cases, they go straight and deactivate. Yeah. But also, one of the things that we've been raising to them also is that when there's a case that involves like assault and other things, we always emphasize that riders should go report a case to the police station, to the police, so that the police can do a proper investigation using the information they can get from the app companies. Okay.
All right. Well, let's take calls. 010-594-6010. How safe are you as you use e-hailing services? Perhaps you're an e-hailing driver yourself and you'd like to share your thoughts on this discussion around safety on e-hailing services after radio personality Anele Mdoda took to social media alleging that a driver had threatened to rape her. Jeff is calling in from Tembisa. Jeff, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well, sir. Thank you so much for calling. Talk to us.
Yes, good evening to the listeners as well and the viewers.
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, actually, I think with this app, I think they have an option with to pay first before you ride. If the app can calculate your distance, okay, let's say, for example, your distance will cost 120 rand. Then they tell you pay before you ride. There are banking options as well that you can use an app to pay. Why don't the customers pay first before they ride? Because it seems as if in most cases they fight for payment and it will be after the ride, of which it gives a driver no option but to fight because he has already worked. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, and here's the thing, Jeff. With some of these apps, you do actually pay first, and then there's the cash option where you pay afterwards, and that's where a lot of the contention does come from. But a fair point, Jeff. Thanks so much for calling in. Bulelwa, I'm going to let you have the final shot here. I mean, we've heard Siyabonga talk about all the avenues that are available for recourse. He's even talked about the importance of training the drivers themselves, right? But what do we take from this moment after Anele Mdoda's sparking of this conversation, particularly where it comes to keeping women safe? I mean, here's the reality is that if you go out at night, for instance, and you want to make it home safely, you don't want to expose yourselves to people that will decide to take you home, you want to make it home safely, it is these e-hailing services that is where a lot of vulnerable people run to, right? So what do we take from this moment? Just your final thoughts.
I think I want to piggyback on something that you said earlier on. I want to talk about how we've discussed all of these safety features. We've discussed, what is helpful, what we can use, what we can do, what we can report, what is missing. But in reality, there's still so much work to be done. There's still a form of accountability. You said it so nicely just a few seconds ago that, safety is still a real issue in South Africa. We're still dealing with a lot, particularly as women, that safety is somewhat of a myth when you are a female in this country, a woman in this country. And I think that, of judging from the stats that I just shared, that just was in relation to over 5,000 people, it tells us that there's still a huge issue. Accountability is still a huge issue, that irrespective of these features. I mean, the only the only stat that I didn't share was the 84% of people who did say that they use safety features. But unfortunately, judging from the stats that I read to you earlier on about who feels safe and who doesn't feel safe, it tells us that we still have a long way to go. And I think for me, you mentioned in the very beginning, you spoke about the comments, you spoke about what people are saying, people's responses, speaking about Anele being dramatic or whatnot. It tells me that there's still microaggressions that we've downplayed, things like your catcalling that that we're not fazed by anymore, that it has to take your extreme cases of being threatened to be sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, that now we've downplayed the microaggressions that lead to points like this. So I think that also, though, like society, we need to also educate ourselves to a point where we need to make safety a normal thing as opposed to unsafety like what we've seen today with Anele's story being a reality.
Yeah. I want to take one last caller. Anonymous is in Johannesburg. Anonymous, good evening.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm fine. This thing of e-hailing, just that's for e-hailing, they don't take a rider serious and the driver. For example, now you can request the Bolt, right? When you request the Bolt, you find that the driver of that car, is not the driver who is on the app.
Yeah.
First of all,
yes.
Or you find that it's the wrong car. I understand. And the other thing, when I as a driver, I report the problem, they said they would investigate. But when the rider report the problem, take a defensive decision. I can be suspended, they can give me a warning, whatever. But if I can report the problem of the rider, they say no, we'll investigate and come back to you. That's the problem.
Yeah. You see, this is something that Siyabonga talked about as well, Anonymous. Thank you so much for that input. I think, Siyabonga, your final thoughts. And, Anonymous even talking about drivers that, the picture doesn't match the picture on the app. The car isn't even the same car. I'm thinking about, just from a South African point of view, and certainly government's point of view, where that stepping up needs to happen. What's the final recommendation that you have for perhaps the Department of Transport? Siyabonga, your final thoughts.
No, on that matter of drivers who have fake accounts and all of that, and we are using fake profile, I think it lies with the rider, and these companies also, they are not yet updated their system in terms of, like, some of us who've been driving for 10 years, I still use the picture that I was still young that time, and all of us, we are facing that challenge that they are not taking it serious to update, especially our profile pictures. But obviously, we want to emphasize the riders. If they come across such things where the car also is not the same registration number that we have on your phone, report such things on these app companies so that they can know, because they are not there. They only rely sometimes on the riders in terms of the roadworthiness of the vehicle and all of that. So in our side, honestly, we just want to say that the safety issues, it lies between the two, which is us also drivers. We are getting killed every day. It's a very big concern. We are losing drivers, like in Cape Town, West, drivers are getting killed, they're getting robbed. So it's a big concern. We've been raising the same issue and concern to these app companies that they need to consider improving their safety between the drivers and also the riders. Also, on the subs, the government side, I think we've been also sending grievances to say that SAPS needs to take us serious, need to take the riders serious, they need also to take drivers serious in terms of the cases that are coming and that are reported to them. Because I think the e-hailing industry at this current moment, that's why we are not finding closure, because most of the cases that are reported are not being taken serious by SAPS. But hopefully also the app companies, they should change their system of how they work with law enforcement, because they sometimes share a link and requesting the law enforcement to go to the link so that they can able to have a proper chat and find some information. I think also that needs to be changed. That's why we are trying to enforce and speak to these people who are managing these app companies to say that there must be a way whereby these matters they can be resolved easy without using links and all of that, because it's difficult even for the departments to able to get some information about any cases.
For IR challenging us really to find innovative ways to deal with crime. But thank you so much for joining us. Siyabonga, Hlabisa, chairperson of the Western Cape E-Hailing Association, and Bulelwa Adonis, Women for Change spokesperson, speaking to us.